Centre for Public Christianity. You're listening to Life and Faith. I'm Simon Smart.
And I'm Natasha Moore.
Another one bites the dust. The writing's on the wall. Pride comes before a fall. Now, are you thinking of that song by Queen, the latest James Bond theme, or lyrics by the Beatles? Or did you know that all these idioms come from the Bible? Technically, we should be licking the dust, not biting it, but anyway, you know what I mean. In fact, if you track the influence of the Bible throughout history, it does show up all over the place, from music and art and literature to education and welfare, even the economy.
And even if we live in a world that feels increasingly secular and sceptical about religion, the Bible is still the world's best-selling book, with more than 100 million copies sold or given away every year, according to The Economist. It seems that the Bible is still in demand and still relevant.
Paul Williams is the chief executive of the British and Foreign Bible Society, but he hasn't always been a fan of the Bible. He was once an atheist, and a successful and happy one at that. But that all changed, and we'll get to that in a moment. But first we wanted to start with the question of whether the Bible matters to people today, particularly in his patch, the UK.
I think there's a range of views that differ across Britain. What we find in much of the country, let's say outside of the large cities, is quite a lot of scepticism, sometimes hostility, but also a lot of ignorance. Strangely, although the Bible has been so foundational to British civilization and culture, many people have grown very ignorant of it. In London, we find some of that, but also a lot more curiosity and openness, strangely enough.
Why do you think that is?
I think that we're seeing a phenomenon that we could talk about as even post-secular, where even secular theorists like Andrew Brown, for example, at The Guardian, will openly talk about the failing of secularism as a worldview that's left a lot of people feeling very lonely and alienated. And I think that's created an environment where there's an openness to spirituality, not necessarily institutional religion, but certainly for the kind of answers about life that the Bible does seek to provide.
It's interesting that you say that people are more open to spirituality, which that doesn't surprise me. But I am slightly surprised that you might think that would include in those people's minds getting back to the Bible.
Well, I think that the Bible will have a sort of deep resonance, often a sort of subconscious resonance. So we find that when we go out onto the streets, for example, and talk to people about their experience of the Bible, how much they've read the Bible, whether they're open to reading the Bible, what we'll find in some of these larger cities is a greater degree of openness and desire, actually, to learn more about the Bible.
Let's talk about the impact of the Bible and its potential impact. You're someone who thinks the Bible's had somewhat, at least, of a positive impact on the world. What are some of those things?
Yes, probably the most significant one that we in Western society all seem to take and tend to take for granted is that we are all equal. And that's not an idea that we find anywhere else in other civilizations, philosophies and religions. The idea that every human being is created equal in God's sight and is valuable infinitely as a life in their own personhood is something that's had a profound impact throughout our society over many decades and centuries.
Do you still need the Bible for that idea?
Well, that's a very good question. I think that it's become very entrenched in a lot of our thinking. And yet, if we look at the way in which society has begun to develop as we've turned away from the Bible for the last 100 years or so, we are beginning to see threats to the idea that every person is equally valuable. And we see it particularly, of course, Christians are often known for talking about the beginning of life and being concerned about that. But we see it also at the end of life and amongst the disabled, for example. So the marginalized and the weak are often the people that we're beginning to see are less valued in a society that tends to value those who are successful, who are wealthy, who are strong.
And the Bible has also had an impact on things like music and literature. Is that another thing that's worth reminding people of?
Yeah, I think we often forget, so much of our musical heritage, our classical music, our cultural heritage, our literature, Shakespeare. It's virtually impossible to understand English literature without an understanding of the Bible, our history, our institutional life. So much of it is built on from a culture and with assumptions that the Bible's provided.
And Paul, are there other ways in which the Bible has had an unexpected or forgotten impact in the UK or even more broadly in the West?
So that movement that started the Bible Society was the same movement that led to the abolition of slavery in the British Empire, that led to the reform of factory conditions, that got rid of child labour, that engaged in prison reform, that was concerned with education of women in particular, that started the Sunday school movement to educate children, that broadened the franchise, in fact, of access to education into the working class, where education was an elite activity. So that Bible culture has had a massive impact. It really led to all of the things that then became the welfare state as we understand it in Britain. That would be the sort of language we use. So much of those institutions of the welfare state in terms of care for society by everyone, the common good, came out of that 19th century reforming movement that was Bible Society culture.
You're listening to Life and Faith from the Centre for Public Christianity. Paul Williams is the head of the British and Foreign Bible Society, and he's big on the idea that the Bible is not a book for religious people only. It's a book for everyone.
Probably the best way of talking about that is in the language of one of my heroes, a guy called Leslie Newbigin, who was a British missionary to India for most of his life and then returned to Britain at the end of his life. And he tells a story of how the Hindu philosophers talk to him about the Bible. And I think many of us think of the Bible as a religious text, a text that's just for Christians. But what this Hindu saw is that the Bible is a unique book. It's a history that tells the story or purports to tell the story of the whole world. And many people have experienced finding themselves in that large story of the world. And the Hindu philosopher said to the missionary, Leslie Newbigin, don't understand why you Christians talk about this text as a religious text, because it doesn't feel like a religious text. It feels like a history of humanity that gives meaning to our story as human beings in the world. It feels like something quite different. So I think that's a very different way of approaching and reading this amazing book.
And Paul, if we think about it even more personally, you've had an interesting journey to Christian faith. At one point in your life, you were very confident you didn't need God in your life. What changed?
Yes, well, I was living as an atheist. I was studying philosophy at Oxford University. I'd rejected the faith that I'd grown up with, the faith of my parents. And I was quite confident that things were working out for me very well. One day my mother asked me about my faith. She was very concerned for me, and I told her that things were going well, that I turned away from God and actually everything was working out very well, thank you, without God. And she said something that was quite shocking, really. She said, well, I'll have to pray that things change.
As in things don't go well for you?
Things don't go so well, which was quite a shocking thing to say. She meant it, of course, from her perspective, in my best long-term interests, that I would discover that what the writer of the biblical book of Ecclesiastes says, which is that life without God actually is meaningless. And things did, in fact, go wrong for me in a number of different areas of my life, and in ways that really provoked me as to whether the beliefs that I was holding to, whilst they were withstanding success, and I was succeeding. I was doing well. I was at Oxford University. I had great opportunities. I was offered a lot of money to go and work for an investment bank. Everything seemed to be going well. But actually, were these beliefs and practices and philosophies adequate for when life became difficult, when there was suffering, or when I was facing actually my own mortality? And that's really what challenged me. There was something else, if I may, that was also interesting at that time that led to me really converting to Christianity or coming back to faith. So my mother, but also a friend, and a friend of mine who was not from a believing family, was becoming interested. He was a physicist, and he was becoming interested in Christian faith. And he knew that I had a background as a Christian. And he was reading the New Testament, and he wanted an understanding of these texts.
So he's coming to you for answers.
So he came to me to explain to him what Christians believe, and I found myself explaining the sort of biblical story to him, and then he became a Christian. So this was a bit of a shock.
That makes it
to me.
It throws your plans out, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And that then led you to reconsider these things.
I think that exercise with my friend made me realize that there was an enormous breadth to Christianity that made sense of the world in a way that some of the atheist philosophies that I was trying to live by actually had gaping holes. Christianity could cope with all of it. And that made it feel more convincing, actually, because truth ought to be able to cope with the whole range of experience. And so my sense was, well, atheism only contains some things that are true, but not the whole truth.
What do you think is the best argument for the place of the Bible in modern culture?
I've just come back from a week in China, which you might think of as not a particularly favourable environment for Christianity or the Bible. Actually, the church in China is growing remarkably fast. And there's, at the end of the Cultural Revolution, there's a bishop, a Christian bishop, Bishop Ding, who is well respected not only by church leaders, Protestant and Catholic, but actually by the Communist Party as well. And he was quoted to me by them. And his phrase was this: the Bible unites us. And so I think that the thing that I've been struck by as I've been working at Bible Society in the Middle East, in some incredibly fractious environments, in Africa and in China, is how the Bible is able to unite people, to bring reconciliation, not only between us and God, but between us and one another, even across religious boundaries, even across faith boundaries between religions. We've found that the Bible can be a place of unity, let's say, between Christians and Muslims, let alone between Christians of different hues, Christians and non-Christians. So I think it's a public book, not just a book that belongs to the church, around which we can unite. So I think that if there are ever concerns that we might have, either as Christians or as non-Christians, as believers of other faiths or none, with the Christian church, the Bible's always the place to go to say, well, aren't you supposed to be anchored here? And doesn't this provide a place where actually humanity finds its own story in a way that brings unity?
From the Centre for Public Christianity, you've been listening to Life and Faith with Simon Smart and Natasha Moore. That was our conversation with Paul Williams, Chief Executive of the British and Foreign Bible Society, with some insights into how people from different countries and cultures engage with the Bible in pretty unexpected ways.
For more conversations like this, visit our website, publicchristianity.org, or subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Just type Life and Faith in the search box to find us. Next week, world peace, sort of. Join us then.